Okay, today we are going to be in Chapter 1, Section 6, Addition of the Real Numbers. Our two topic objectives for today are to identify the additive inverse of a real number and then to add integers and rational numbers. Okay, so when we are talking about addition of the real numbers, the first thing we need to do is make a note that any number without a sign in front of it is a positive number. Okay, so what that means is if I write the number 3, that is a positive number. Even though there isn't a positive sign out front, that's considered a positive number. I don't have to write plus 3 out front. I can, but I don't have to. These are both positive numbers. So that's all that that little note up there says. Okay, so first way that we are going to add real numbers is we're going to use the number line. Okay, so I'm going to draw us a number line, and then I'll give us a problem. Okay, so here's our example. There's our number line, and our example says that we need to take 3 plus a negative 4. Okay, so when you're using the number line, we're going to look at our first number. Our first number is a positive 3. So let's go over and we're going to draw a circle at our positive 3. And then it says we're going to add negative 4. The negative tells us to go left. Negative tells us to go left. So we're going to go left 4 spaces. So we start at our negative 3 or at our positive 3. And we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 spots makes us end up at negative 1. So 3 plus a negative 4 equals a negative 1. Okay, let's do another example of this. If I can get my paper to cooperate, that is. Okay, here's another example. Let's do negative 4 plus 2. Again, let's draw our number line. 0, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so here's our number line. We're looking at our first number. Our first number is negative 4, so we're going to start at negative 4. And then where it says plus 2, so that's a positive 2, positive goes to the right. So we're going to start at negative 4 and go 1, 2 spots, and that leaves us at negative 2. So that tells us that negative 4 plus a positive 2 equals a negative 2. So that is one way that you can do addition of the real numbers. You can also think of this in terms of signs. So can also think in terms of signs. In section 5 or 1.5 we talked about these, but I'm going to rewrite them. We have a negative times a negative, that gives us a positive. We have a negative times a positive, that gives us a negative. If we have a positive times a negative, that gives us a negative. And if we have a positive times a positive, that gives us a positive. Okay, so how is that supposed to help us when we're doing adding? Well, let's look at a problem. Let's look at positive 3 plus a negative 5. If we were using the number line, we would go to -3 and then move to the left, or excuse me, go to +3 and move to the left 5 spots. But if you look at this right here, we have a negative times a positive. A negative, or a positive times a negative gives us a negative number. So right here where there's these two symbols together, we can actually write that as 3 minus 5. So 3 minus 5 is going to be a -2. Because 5 minus 3 is 2, but then you have more negatives than you do positives. One way that some really like to think about it is pairing up. So we have a positive, a positive, a positive, and then we have negative, 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 negative. We have 3 positive numbers, and then we have 5 negative numbers, right? So we have to pair them up, pair them up, pair them up. And we don't have any more positive numbers to pair up. So what does that leave us with? That leaves us with 2 negative numbers, thus our -2. If that helps you to think about it, good. I'm glad. You can do that, you can do the number line, or you might just start thinking through it arithmetically, however you say that word. Alright, so let's do another example like that so you can kind of get some more practice. Go back up to the top of my paper. What if we had, oh, sorry, I knocked my camera a little bit. There we go. What if we had a -5 plus a -5? Okay, let's look at these symbols again right here in the middle. We have a positive times a negative, so positive times a negative, whoops, and that equals a negative. So we can write this as -5 minus 5. So there you have the same symbol, so that means we have -10. If you want to do the number line, -10, -9, -8, -7, -6, -5, -4. If you want to do the number line, we are starting at -5, because that's our first number, and then we're going to go -5, so we're going to go to the left 5. We go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which would make us end up at -10, which is the answer we have. If you want to think about it with the pairings, like I showed you in the last problem, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 negatives, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 negatives. So do we have any positive numbers to pair up with any of these? No. So then we just have 10 negatives. Hopefully that makes some sense for you. Okay, so now we're going to move on, and we are going to add fractions. We've already spent some time in section 1.3 doing this, so if you need more help, if you need more practice, go back to chapter 1, section 3. And you can rework the homework and rework the problems, and that'll be your best bet for doing more of these. I'm just going to do one problem with this, and then we're going to do some homework. Okay, so we have an example. We have 7 over 16 plus a -2 over 3. Whoa, excuse me. Okay, so again, let's simplify these signs. We have a positive times a negative. So that's going to be a negative. So 7 over 16 minus 2 over 3. Now we have to get a common denominator. So if you don't know what a common denominator is between 16 and 3, you just take 16 times 3, and that will give you 48. And that's a common denominator between those. Okay, so now that we have a common denominator, Let's look at this first one that we have, this 7 over 16. We times the bottom by 3 to get us our 48. So that means we have to times the top by 3, which will give us 21. Then you have to look at your second number, and we times the bottom by 16 to give us our 48. So that means we have to times the top number by 16 to get us our 32. So now that we have a common denominator, we can just subtract the tops. So 21 minus 32 all over 48. 21 minus 32 will give us a negative 11 over 48. If you weren't sure on that, 21 minus 32, you could put it in your calculator or you could do the number line. I don't recommend necessarily doing the pairings on this one just because you'd have to make 21 pairings and then 32 pairings to figure that out. But this will be your final answer, and that would be what you'd put into the course compass site. The last topic we are going to cover in Chapter 1, Section 6 is called Additive Inverses, or opposites. You're really going to hear them called additive inverses more than opposites. And these are going to look like a plus negative a equals 0. So, two numbers that you can add together to get 0 are called additive inverses or opposites. So if you can add two numbers together and they give you 0, they are additive inverses of each other. So let's do an example. We need to find out what the additive inverse of 3 is. So what can you add to 3, what can go in this blank, that'll give you 0? If you want to think about this in terms of a number line, that might be easiest when it's starting out. So we have 1, 2, 3. So we need to know what can we add to 3 to get us to 0. Well, if you think about it, we're going 1, 2, 3. We went to the left 3 spots. Left is negative. We went 3 spots. So the additive inverse of 3 is negative 3. So let's think about what is the additive inverse of negative 5. What can we add to negative 5 to get us to 0? We can add a positive 5. Those are going to cancel each other out. Again, this you can think about with your pairings. If you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 positives and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 negatives. If you start with the negatives and you have 5 of those and we need to pair up to get 0, then that means you have to have 5 positive pairings as well. So that's all there is to know about additive inverse. So let's go do some of your homework now. Okay, so let's open up our homework for Chapter 1, Section 6. I am going to work the last 2 problems of this homework because they are word problems and I hadn't given you any word problems in your notes. So I'm going to do question 21 and question 22. Okay, so let's look at question 21. It says that David Nurkowski owed $97 on his bank credit card. He charged another item costing $183. Find the amount that David owed the bank. So, David owed the bank $197, so that'll be your first number, or excuse me, $97. And then he charged another item costing $183. So do you think we're going to add or subtract the $183 from the $97? We are going to be adding it because that'll give us our total amount that we owe the bank. So we're going to take 97 plus 183, and that'll give us 280. So the amount that David owes the bank is $280. Let's put that in, hit enter, and that's correct. Okay, so let's go to 22. Do similar exercise. Okay, so this is a football one. A football team lost 13 yards on one play, and then they lost another 3 yards on the following play. What is the total loss in yardage? So they lost 13 yards, and then they lost another 3 yards. Do you think we're going to be adding these or subtracting these? To get the total amount of yard lossage, we're going to be adding these. So we have 13 plus 3, which will give us 16. We lost a total of 16 yards between the two plays. Hit enter, and that's correct. So that is how you do the 2 word problems. I really recommend working through the word problems more than once, even if you understand them pretty well, because learning to read math and learning how to understand what they're asking for from a problem is really important. So good luck on your homework and good luck on your quizzes.